Hello, my name is Greg, and I'm a progressive veteran. I'll be your host for this episode as we discuss free speech in the wake of the Capitol riot. A congresswoman from Colorado, Lauren Boebert, tweeted yesterday that Apple bans Parler for violent threats on the same day that Twitter allows "Hang Mike Pence" to trend. She claimed that this is evidence of an absurd double standard meant to silence conservatives. Fox News reported on this trending hashtag, stating that many users were confused to see such a violent item in the trending section following Twitter's decision to permanently suspend President Trump due to risk of further incitement of violence. The Fox News article was published with a URL which included the phrase, "Big Tech Social Media Censorship Twitter." As I understand it, this is not an equivalent situation. Parler was removed from these companies' properties because Parler failed to remove posts inciting violence and Parler didn't comply with content moderation requirements. "Hang Mike Pence" wasn't trending on Twitter because it was an attempt by Twitter users to incite violence. Rather, it was trending because Twitter users were discussing the pro-Trump mob who chanted "Hang Mike Pence" during the Capitol riot. Reuters news picture editor Jim Berg heard at least 3 different rioters at the Capitol say that they hope to find Vice President Pence and execute him by hanging him from a Capitol Hill tree as a traitor. This is confirmed by a video from the Capitol riot showing a large mob chanting that exact phrase. These same extremists fashioned multiple nooses near the Capitol. I believe that this congresswoman is acting in bad faith by spreading this false equivalency, as it's politically convenient for her to claim that Twitter is guilty of the same things that got Parler removed from these app stores. It's important to understand that news trending on Twitter, even if that news is reporting on things of a violent nature, is not itself violent or an attempt to incite violence. Those are members of Twitter using the platform to speak about current events. Now, on the topic of users speaking, Parler's CEO stated, "We won't cave to politically motivated companies and those authoritarians who hate free speech." Business Insider reported that prominent users on Parler said that this ban was a form of censorship. Representative Devin Nunes wrote, "Welcome to political censorship," in response to the removal. It's important for people to understand that free speech is protected from government censorship. Businesses are free to implement policies which refuse service in certain conditions so long as they aren't discriminating against classes that are protected federally. Suppose you own a business and decide that you'll refuse service to anyone who enters that's engaging in political canvassing. As far as I understand, it's within your right to ask those who violate that policy to leave your property. In this case, Twitter is refusing access to their virtual property to those who would use it to incite violence. As Twitter isn't owned by the government, this is not a violation of free speech protections. Now, suppose Twitter was owned by the government and that Joe Biden determined he would censor conservative voices going forward. That would likely be censorship and would likely violate free speech laws. I'm not a lawyer, so I might be missing something with this next point of discussion that I want to consider. I don't think I am, but I just want to throw it out there that I might be. Representative Nunes wants a racketeering investigation due to the decision of Amazon, Google, and Apple to suspend Parler from their services. Nunes claimed that this suspension violates the RICO Act. Now, the RICO Act is a federal law which allows prosecution and civil penalties for racketeering activity performed as part of an ongoing criminal enterprise. Nunes lamented that he had 3 million followers on Parler and claimed that he will no longer be able to communicate with those people and stated that they're Americans too. Now, I fail to see how this is in any way a violation of any RICO acts. These companies are free to terminate business arrangements which violate their terms of service, and the fact that multiple business arrangements were terminated following insurrection at the Capitol is not evidence of a criminal conspiracy against the right. Further, Nunes' statement that he can no longer communicate with 3 million Americans is ridiculous. I have never had a Parler account, and I've been unfortunate enough to hear drivel from Representative Nunes on numerous occasions. He appears to be purposefully ignoring that phones, email, letters, Instagram, Facebook, and other forms of communication exist. The removal of Parler from these companies' properties is representative of the free market of capitalism. I've encountered numerous right-wing members who condemn what they consider to be communism or socialism. I think it's fair to assume that those are all or mostly capitalists making those admonishments. This is how capitalism works. If the free market doesn't like something, it doesn't have to support it. Parler users or others who feel that their voices are being hindered are free to make their own competing phones with their own competing app stores or their own competing web hosting services. No one is stopping them from doing so. And this is consistent with the fact that their free speech is not being hindered. I welcome anyone to provide evidence to the contrary, which proves that our government is preventing these bad faith actors from speaking. Sources for this episode are in the description. I didn't mention that in the first one, and I want to keep in mind that I'm going to try to reference that in every episode going forward, that sources will always be available in the description for anything that I say. And I want to thank you all for listening. Until the next time, a progressive veteran is out.